It wasn't your fault, Jeremiah.
The afternoon sun slanted across the living room, throwing long shadows across the floor. Jeremiah sat hunched on the couch, Malika fussing in his arms. His shoulders sagged with exhaustion, the child's cries tugging at every frayed edge of his patience. Abraham came in quietly. For a long moment he just watched, the way Jeremiah rocked, whispering soft prayers under his breath, the way his hands trembled with fatigue. Finally, Abraham stepped forward. "Here, let me." Jeremiah looked up, startled. "You sure?" Abraham nodded, his face calm in a way Jeremiah hadn't seen before. He held out his arms. Jeremiah hesitated, then slowly passed Malachi over. Abraham cradled the baby carefully, steadying the small body against his chest. Almost instantly, the child quieted, curling into him. Jeremiah exhaled, a weight lifting off his chest. He sank back into the couch, rubbing his eyes. Abraham rocked gently, humming low, his hand brushing Maliki's tiny back. Then he glanced back at Jeremiah, his eyes heavy with something unsaid. "I need to tell you something," he said, "about that night in the kitchen, when I kissed you." Jeremiah stiffened, his gaze dropping to the floor. Abraham's voice came quiet, steady. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come at you like that. I was drunk, and I was drowning, and I pulled you into it when you didn't ask for it. I thought meeting you was enough reason, but it wasn't. You deserve better." Jeremiah swallowed hard, emotion knotting his throat. Abraham shifted Maliki in his arms, pressing his cheek lightly to the child's hair. "But I'm telling you now, it's going to be different. Not just with us, with him, too." He kissed the baby's head gently. "I'm done running from being his father. You've carried too much alone, Jeremiah. From now on, I'm carrying the weight with you." For the first time in months, Jeremiah felt something loosen inside him. He watched Abraham cradle Malachi, not distant, not detached, but tender, present, and the ache in his chest softened. Abraham looked back at him, his voice steady. "Things will be different. You'll see." Jeremiah nodded slowly, a tear sliding down his cheek. For once, he let it fall without shame. Jeremiah sat cross-legged on the edge of his bed, his elbows resting on his knees. Malachi, now nearly 9 months old, shifted in his sleep, letting out a small laugh that bubbled into the quiet. His hands twitched, as though chasing dreams only he could see. Jeremiah smiled, leaning forward on his palms. "What's so funny, little man?" he whispered. He could have watched Malachi for hours like this, the rise and fall of his chest, the innocent murmurs that came in his dreams. There was no weight of church sermons here, no guilt, no shame. Just a child, a gift, and the quiet rhythm of love. The front door opened, followed by heavy footsteps. Abraham's voice carried through the house, strong and unguarded. "Jeremiah? You here?" Jeremiah shot up, finger pressed to his lips, though Abraham couldn't see him. He hurried to the bedroom door, motioning frantically. "Shh, he's sleeping." Abraham chuckled softly, slipping into the room with his tie loosened and his jacket slung over one arm. He lowered his voice. "Boss gave me the day off," said I earned it. "Closed that big real estate deal I told you about." Jeremiah nodded, half smiling, then gestured toward the bed. "Come here. Look at this." They leaned over the bed together, watching as Malachi cooed in his sleep, lips curving into another small laugh. Abraham let out a low chuckle of his own. "He's something else," Abraham whispered. Then his gaze shifted, not to Malachi, but to Jeremiah. He saw the tenderness in Jeremiah's eyes, the unguarded warmth, the way he looked at Malachi as though it was his own child he was watching. Abraham's throat tightened. "Would you," he hesitated, then said it before he could second guess, "would you like to be his godfather?" Jeremiah turned sharply, eyes wide. "Really? Why not?" Abraham said, shrugging with a small smile. "You spend more time with him than I do." Jeremiah's chest tightened. He looked back at Malachi, then at Abraham. His voice was quiet, careful. "You know what that means, don't you?" Abraham tilted his head. Jeremiah held his gaze. "It means we'll be in each other's lives for a very long time." For a moment, the only sound was Malika's soft breathing. Once, it had been understood that Jeremiah's place here was temporary, that he was a stand-in until Abraham remarried, until a new mother filled the space Rebecca had left. But tonight, the air shifted. Abraham nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "I know what it means." Their eyes lingered, heavy with something unspoken, before they both turned back to Malachi. The day had cooled by the time Abraham found Jeremiah in the kitchen, rinsing bottles. Malik was settled in the crib, the monitor resting on the counter. Abraham leaned against the doorway. "Come sit with me on the deck," he said. "I've got a game of spades waiting." Jeremiah hesitated, then glanced at the baby monitor. He reached for it, drying his hands on a towel as he picked it up. "All right," he said quietly, "just for a bit." The screened-in deck stretched across the back of the house, a space Jeremiah had designed himself. Wood beams rose overhead, warm and honey-toned, holding a ceiling fan that turned slow and steady. Lantern-style sconces glowed along the walls, their light soft against the screens. Through the mesh, the yard blurred into layers of green, the last pale gold of evening slipping between the trees. The air carried the clean scent of cut grass and damp earth, spring still fresh enough to feel like a promise. Somewhere beyond the yard, frogs called low and steady, their voices folding into the soft whir of the fan. Crickets had begun to stir, tentative, like they were easing into the night. It was the kind of space meant for lingering, cool evenings, quiet talk, the sort of peace that didn't ask anything of you. Jeremiah set the monitor on the table, its green light steady, a small tether to the nursery inside. Abraham was already shuffling the deck, the cards snapping plain between his hands. "You built this place good," Abraham said, nodding at the beams. "Feels like it's always been part of the house." Jeremiah smiled faintly as he took the seat across from him. "Rebecca wanted it screened in. Said she wanted to sit out here in the evenings without fighting bugs. I just tried to make it the way she pictured it." Abraham dealt the cards, the soft scrape of paper against wood blending with the night sounds outside. For a moment, the weight that usually sat between them felt lighter, thinned by the glow of lanterns, by the cool air, by the simple act of being still. Jeremiah glanced toward the monitor, reassured by its steady light, then looked back down at the hand he'd been dealt. Across the table, Abraham's eyes lingered on him longer than the cards. The cards slapped softly against the table as Abraham dealt. Jeremiah studied his hand, letting the rhythm of the game settle over him. For a while, they played in near silence, broken only by the faint hum of the baby monitor on the table and the night sounds drifting in through the screens. Halfway through the second hand, Abraham set his cards down. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on Jeremiah. "Can I ask you something?" Jeremiah arched a brow. "You already are." Abraham didn't smile. Why'd you turn to drugs back then? What was it that pulled you under?" The question landed heavy. Jeremiah stared at his cards, then lowered them slowly to the table. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "It wasn't about wanting to get high," he said quietly. "It was about wanting to forget." Abraham frowned. Forget what? Jeremiah's eyes stayed on the wood grain of the table, his voice steady but low. When I was 10, the deacon at our church put his hands on me, told me it was God's way of showing me love. I carried that shame for years. Thought it was my fault. Thought it meant I was broken. Abraham's chair creaked as he shifted, but Jeremiah kept speaking, the words tumbling out like they'd been waiting too long. By the time I was a teenager, the guilt was eating me alive. Drugs made it quiet. For a little while, at least. But when I finally got clean, I swore I'd never give in to my body again. I made a vow of celibacy. Figured that was the only way to keep myself from slipping back. A breeze stirred the screens. Somewhere beyond the yard, frogs called low and steady, their voices threading through the dusk. Abraham pushed back his chair and walked to the edge of the deck, staring out at the sky streaked with purple and thinning gold. His shoulders rose and fell, slow and heavy. After a moment, he came back. He stood behind Jeremiah, his hands settling gently on Jeremiah's shoulders, his thumbs pressed into the tight knots there, slow, patient. It wasn't your fault, Abraham said softly. You were a child. That shame don't belong to you. Jeremiah's eyes burned. The warmth of Abraham's hands seeped into him, steadier than he expected. He turned slowly in his chair, lifting his gaze. Abraham's eyes held his, steady, unflinching. One hand rose, brushing Jeremiah's cheek with a tenderness that made his breath catch. It had been 6 months since the last time Abraham had kissed him. 6 months since Jeremiah had stiffened and pulled away, fear and faith rising faster than want. Abraham leaned down and kissed him again, soft at first, like he was asking permission, then deeper, certain. This time, Jeremiah didn't retreat. His body went still, then yielded, his lips parting, as if finally letting go of something he'd been gripping too tightly for too long. The cards lay forgotten on the table, the game abandoned. Only the quiet of the spring night remained, the hum of the monitor, the soft chorus beyond the screens, and the unsteady thrum of two hearts, crossing a line they both knew had been waiting. The baby stirred first. Malika's cries carried down the hall, pulling Jeremiah from a restless half-sleep. His chest still ached with the memory of last night, the press of Abraham's lips, the warmth of his hand against his face. He pushed the thought away as he lifted Malachi from the crib, shushing him softly, warning a bottle, moving through the routine with practiced motions. But the echo of the kiss clung to him like smoke. When Abraham came into the kitchen, Jeremiah felt the weight of it between them. He couldn't hold it in. About last night, Jeremiah began, his voice tight. I need to say I'm sorry. Abraham stopped short, blinking at him. For the kiss? I shouldn't have let that happen. It was wrong. Abraham's brow furrowed. Wrong, Jeremiah. I made a promise to Rebekah, Jeremiah cut in quickly, his words tumbling out. And I made one to God. I can't. His voice broke. He swallowed hard. I can't be that man again. Abraham stared at him, bewildered. That man? What are you talking about? You did nothing wrong. Jeremiah finally looked up, his eyes dark with something Abraham didn't fully understand. You don't know how deep it goes. The shame, the guilt. I swore it off for a reason. Abraham opened his mouth, then shut it, searching for words. He'd expected regret, maybe hesitation, but not this. Not the depth of self-loathing wrapped around Jeremiah's voice like barbed wire. Jeremiah, he said slowly, shaking his head. You think kissing me makes you less, but it makes you dirty? Jeremiah flinched at the bluntness. He looked away, clutching Malachi closer as if the child were the only steady thing left. I can't explain it to you. Just know it can't happen again. The silence stretched, heavy and aching. Abraham stood there, trying to find sense in what he just heard, while Jeremiah rocked the baby, his eyes fixed anywhere but Abraham's face. Abraham sat on the deck, the air heavy with humidity and the smell of damp wood. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at nothing. Sorry. That was the first thing Jeremiah had said. Sorry for a kiss that had felt more real, more grounding than anything Abraham had touched in months. Abraham shook his head, bewildered. He'd expected Jeremiah to be hesitant, sure, maybe even cautious. But the way his voice had cracked under the weight of shame, it unsettled Abraham more than the kiss itself. Did Jeremiah really believe a brush of lips could damn him? That wanting comfort in another man's arms made him dirty? Abraham rubbed a hand over his face. He carried his own secrets for years, keeping his attraction to men tucked away where nobody could use it against him. But he'd never hated himself for it. It was just a fact, as plain as his skin color or the sound of his own voice. Jeremiah was different. Whatever he'd gone through, it had carved something deep inside him. A vow of silence, a vow of denial. And yet, Abraham could still feel the softness of his mouth, the way he hadn't pulled away. For those few seconds, Jeremiah had let go. He kissed him back. Abraham gritted his teeth, frustration burning low in his chest. It wasn't wrong, he muttered to the empty yard. Not the way he thinks it was. But the house behind him was quiet, Jeremiah already retreating into the safety of prayer and routine. Abraham stayed outside, staring at the trees until the light shifted and the air turned heavy, carrying with it the uneasy knowledge that last night had changed everything, even if Jeremiah wanted to pretend it hadn't.